Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here with us today. My name is Jonah from Teachable, and I am thrilled to have you all here today. Hop in the comments before we get started, like Sherry is already doing. Let us know where you're tuning in from, what you're excited to learn about, how you heard about Jay or Teachable. We love hearing all of those things. And also let us know where you're at in your journey of being a creator. What you're here for today, what you already have, what kind of content or products you make. We love hearing all of that. And throughout the presentation, feel free to ask any questions you have. We have some dedicated Q&A time, but you're welcome to ask during the presentation as well. I'll be saving them, coming back to them. There's some moments for all of you to engage. So once again, use that chat like we're all in a room. It's a community here, and we're going to have fun. And I'm going to introduce our guest today. We're super excited to have Jay with us. Jay, how are you doing?
Hey, Jonah. Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Before we dive in, I know you have a lot to teach us and to show us today. For anyone who hasn't heard about you, doesn't know you, can you just give us a little brief background? Who are you, Jay, and what are we going to learn today?
All right. I'm Jay Melone. I run a company called Profit Ladder, and it is the sort of been birthed out of all of my struggles to grow my previous company, which still exists. It's sort of in the background called New Haircut. So today I'm going to teach you how I created my own profit ladder for my last business and how I help people figure out those systems today.
Love it. Well, let's dive in. Once again, everybody, feel free to ask questions as we go. If I don't answer them or Jay doesn't right away, we'll get to you in just a moment. So, Jay, I got your slides up and I'll let you take it away.
All right. Thanks. Thanks for everyone for being here. So, all right. So what I want to do today is I'm going to start, and I just want to talk through living on this sales hamster wheel for my last business, which I sat stuck on for a decade or more. And then I'm going to share sort of the story and sort of the steps that I took to get myself out of that to the point where today I'm building what I consider to be my dream business. And there's this number that I tend to talk about, which is very polarizing. But when I put that ladder in place for myself, I actually experienced profit growth of 1,810%, which seems very wild and almost unbelievable. But I'll show you what that looks like. I'll show my work. I'll be totally transparent about the parts I get stuck. And what I'm going to be talking about is productizing your services. So we'll talk about what that means. And when I get through my story, what I'm going to do is I'm going to unpack 5 steps that you can use to do the same thing. There will be a free guide that breaks down the steps that I cover. So I'll go at it through an overview, and then you'll get the guide after this so that you can implement it on your own. And if you get stuck or have questions, there'll be a link in there to get a free session with me toward the end. And like Jonah said, there will be Q&A at the end, but feel free to drop it into the chat as we get going. So one phrase I used that I'm excited about 15 years into being an entrepreneur is that I finally feel like I'm building my dream business. And I want to hear from you. So use the chat. What words come up for you as you think about building your dream business?
I'll pipe in here as well, Jay. I know, it's impossible working at Teachable not to wonder if you could start your own creator business. So I've been starting to do like cooking content and stuff and seeing all the troubles creators have as well in getting started. It's like, and Sherry is calling this out. You want financial freedom, you want to be able to have fun, and you want flexibility in when and how you work. I think those are big things.
Love it. I'll come work for you, Sherry.
Yeah. Cool. We'll probably get some more rolling in, but there's a little delay there, folks, as well with the comments. So
okay,
keep them coming.
All right. So I'll answer my own question. So kind of building off what Sherry said. So for me, one area, and this feels like business 101, but when I started my first business in 2010, the name of the business was New Haircut. That's kind of the backdrop of the story I'm going to tell today. But nobody ever told me I felt really excited about the service that I was going to be doing and how I was going to be helping the companies that I did. But I didn't know that I was going to be spending more than half of my time marketing and selling. I thought I open my doors, I do great work, and business just comes flooding in. And the reality is, the more my business grew, the more I drifted away from the work that I love doing and trying to sell and market that work, which didn't feel great. So for foundationally, my dream business requires me to market and sell less. But in exchange, I still want to be able to earn more money. I'm in business, I'm a business owner. I've lived in scarcity for a long time as a business owner. So this dream business of mine better be able to produce the income I want to make. But I also want to be able to reach more people and to create more impact. And finally, like Sherry said, I want to also be able to enjoy more freedom. So I experienced a whole bunch of personal setbacks, divorce from my previous wife. My business partner and I separated our companies. I went through lots and lots of burnout and depression and isolation. So my dream business, I want to be able to earn more income, more impact, have more freedom and flexibility in my life. So we're going to get to that, but first we got to drag ourselves a little bit through the mud. So I'm going to pull you back to 2010. I launched a company called New Haircut. The name of the company is a separate story, which we can talk about over beers one day. But we were designing, when we started, we were a design and development studio. So we used to design websites. Then we got into building mobile apps. We got a little distracted for points in time where we started designing pitch decks for companies. We eventually started building technology platforms. And where we settled after about 6 or 7 years is we evolved into more of a product strategy company. So we used to work very service-based, a consultancy. We eventually earned enough credibility to win business from Ford and Amazon and Google and Home Depot, logos that any business provider would be proud to slap on their website. Now, these are services where we're going in and a company like Ford comes to me and says, hey, we're thinking about launching this new offer. Come in, help us make sure that it's the right bet for us to put on our roadmap. Because if it is, we're going to dedicate a whole team of people and millions of dollars to take that thing and build it and send it to market. So before we do that, come in, do your research, prototype some ideas, make sure that we're investing in the right areas, the right categories, validate it, help us figure out what is the best solution for us to take to market. So that requires a certain set of skills and frameworks and methodologies in order to do that work. It's highly performative. It's very intense work. I was often working with cross-functional executive leaders in these big companies. Stakes are very high. These are 3 to 6 or even sometimes year-long engagements. So very high pressure work. And so as a result, and because the bets that I was able to produce for them would produce 7 and 8 figure returns, I charged anywhere from $50,000 to $200,000 for that work, which is great. It was a great place to be in. But the sales cycles on those things, very, very difficult. To get in front of a VP of product strategy at a Ford or a Google or an Amazon, you don't just sort of send them a DM and you have a coffee and you win $100,000 worth of business. These are 12, 18-month, 24-month sales cycles where you're constantly sort of explaining to people and educating them and persuading them, and then trying to separate yourself in terms of how you're unique and better and how you can help them. So my job as the CEO of the company, at a point we grew to 35 people. I had a business partner. We had 3 offices. Things were going well, but my job in general, I didn't really love it. So I really sat for 10 years on this sales roller coaster. So what that mean was sales is my least favorite job. And in many ways, it still is today. I've just made it better. So what would often happen is I'd put it off. I would throw myself into the work. And right when we were seeing the horizon where we were going to be short on cash, and I was going to start to jeopardize not only my livelihood, but the livelihoods of 30, 35 employees, I would go out and I would do everything I could to drum up business. I'd realize we were getting short on work. So I'd crank up that sales engine. And honestly, most of the time at the sort of the 11th hour, way too close for comfort, we would land a new client or I would win additional business from an existing client. And then we throw ourselves into the work, which is the whole reason that I was in business to begin with, was to do the work that I was good at, that I felt excited to do. And then 3, 6 months in the work, guess what's not happening while that's happening? All these other things. So I'm not living on that roller coaster anymore. I'm kind of like throw myself into the work because we're a small company. So I liked being involved in some of the project work. But just as we're kind of like coming out and celebrating the win and maybe trying to drum up some additional business, my job was to get back on that roller coaster. And that, for all intents and purposes, was my life for the better part of running New Haircut. So a friend of mine, aside from the sales roller coaster, a friend of mine referred to this as the burnout carousel. And she hit it spot on, because doing that 10 years really kind of started to wear me down. Constantly pitching, constantly prospecting for the next lead, trying to get referrals, trying to get upsold within Ford. If I sold to this VP, to try to win business from the next VP. Really like a recipe for burnout. So it really hit me quite hard after a while. And I just want to pause for a moment and just see. I know, Joni, you said there's a delay in the chat, but just drop a yes. Help me understand that I'm not the only one. Anyone else here building a creator business or any kind of business that's feels like they've hit up on burnout? I'd love a yes or a thumbs up or something in the chat.
I can say yes too. It is. And I see it every day. It's we talk about this a lot in Teachable as well, because there's like the phase of getting out of the way you're working for someone else. And then you build your own business, and then you have to figure out how to make that enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we have a few people in the chat agreeing. Just yes. Burnout
right.
real. Yeah.
Yep. Cool. Okay. So honestly, if I had to really name my mission with Profit Ladder, it is to help other business owners avoid that burnout, because there's so many of us that do great work that don't have the systems and the strategy in place to grow. And we're constantly living on that roller coaster. And especially as a small business, where we're either selling the work or we're doing the work. And then, of course, we go through those tough cycles of feast or famine. So I'm trying to build systems that bring in, predictably bring in and attract new clients while also generating revenue for the business. That's what we're going to be talking about today. So back to burnout before we get there. So for me, what I experienced as an entrepreneur building New Haircut was very slow, linear, stressful growth. So I was constantly thrashing, like I've been talking about, between selling the work and doing the work. Hard to get into a rhythm when that's kind of your day in and day out. Even when I was in the marketing and sales, that there was a very grueling, long process of winning over those clients and securing a contract. Sometimes I get to the 11th hour with them in the final stage, only to be either ghosted or they kind of like gave the proposal over to somebody else. Very difficult to deal with, and then just kind of move on to the next lead in your pipeline. In addition to that, like I could have tried to outsource a lot of this job, but that means more people, things that I'm responsible for, more overhead, more risk in the business overall. So I didn't really have a good system to systematize this process or get additional help. And so because of that, it felt like if I stopped living on that roller coaster, everything else would come crashing down. So a tremendous amount of stress. So this went on for 7 or 8 years. And what started to happen was the pain of remaining as I was, and just the fear of the unknown of trying something different was so great that I was just willing to forego that comfort zone and try something else. So what I started to take notice of was in the work that we did. So I said that it was more like active consulting work that we were doing. I noticed that some of our clients would ask us about the frameworks that we use, or even like peers in the industry. We would run these frameworks, like one was called a design sprint, which we became pretty notable in the industry as being a consultancy that you could see what good looked like when it came to running design sprints. So we got a lot of questions and curiosity around some of those frameworks. So you said, what my business partner and I asked ourselves is, okay, if it takes us 18 months to sell this $50,000, $100,000 thing, that 6 or 7 people then do for the company, what would it look like if we could make that process much shorter, much easier? And so educating our clients on how we did what we did became something that we were curious about. We were not trainers in the least bit. We had very little experience outside of teaching a couple kids how to hit a ball off in t-ball and how to swing a bat. I was really not much of an educator or a coach nonetheless, but it was worth the risk. So we started organizing these. This is 2017 or so. So pre-pandemic, pre a lot of the technology that made virtual training and coaching a thing. The technology was there, but for the time being, we would organize these in-person training events that were 1 or 2 days long. And so the first very one that we did was in Berlin, because my business partner had moved his family to Berlin at the time. And we got somewhere around 50 people in that workshop, and we charged $1,000 a seat. And so in the course of 2 days, we made $50,000. And for us, that was a huge light bulb moment where we said, hold on a second. Normally, it takes us 24 months, 18 months to sell a thing so that 7 people can do a thing for 6 months. And then we make $50,000, $100,000 from that thing. We spent the last 3 weeks building the curriculum for this first workshop, or promoting it, organizing it, filling it, doing all the things to make the event as good as we knew how to do it. And we made basically the same amount of money. And it was, at the time, it was a team of 5 people that trained. As we got better, building curriculum got much easier and faster. We went from a team of 4 or 5 trainers to a team of 1 or 2 trainers. And we would continue to pack those with 30, 40, 50 people, charging $1,000 a seat, even up to $2,000 a seat over time. So when we were doing our consulting, I want to try to, as much as I can, be transparent with the numbers, because I promised that 1,810%. So when we started with the consulting, we were charging around $125 an hour if we broke down our hourly rate. And our cost was around $50 an hour, which the cost more or less stayed the same. These trainings with 1 or 2 people doing them and making 30, 40, 50,000 in 2 days, at a point, we didn't have to develop the curriculum anymore. It was built. Our hourly rate jumped to $750 an hour for those 1 or 2 day trainings. So that profit was around 1,400%. That's a 1,250% jump just by going from active consulting services to what I would call packaged services, where we offered a thing in a short, condensed format. We taught them everything they need to know. We gave them additional resources, and they were off and running. So that was phase 1, was going from active consulting to packaged services, packaged training. And there's different forms of packaged services. So that was phase 1. So we sold these for $1,000, packaged offers, shorter sales cycles, the fulfillment on them. Actually, to get into the training, we had a website. We used Eventbrite actually at the time. People would buy their own tickets. Fulfillment was sort of self-fulfilled. The only thing that we had to do was make sure they had their tickets, make sure they knew how to get to the event, and that was about it. So what happened next was we went from packaged services to then productizing. So what happened was, in those trainings, we ran dozens. Over the next 2 or 3 years, we I think around 50% of our revenue switched from active consulting to packaged training services. So needless to say, we were sort of all in. And what happened was, as we ran those sessions over and over again, we would get almost the same set of questions. Number 1, can we get the slides? Almost within the first 10 minutes. Are we going to get a copy of these slides? My answer, no, that's our training IP. That's for us. Your ticket doesn't cover the cost of getting access to that. Okay, what about the worksheets on the table? Can we have those? You can use them in this session, but you can't have those. You can't take them home and resell them. What about the template that we're using right now for this activity? No, sorry. No, 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 no. All I said was no for a year or so. It takes a little bit to get through the thick skull sometimes. And so what I started to do, it took me a couple of years, but I started to ask myself, okay, if we're selling these trainings, but it's kind of a grind to get on a plane and go to different cities and teach people. And then some people want a refund because they can't make it because their kid's playing in a soccer game. And all of a sudden it felt like the profits are great, but I'm still doing a lot of the work and I still have to promote them. I still have to market and sell them. It's different. It was easier than promoting and selling a $50,000, $100,000 consulting package, but it was still work. So we kept asking ourselves the same question. What would it look like if this were easier to sell and fulfill and for our customer to buy and get value? So we always thought about this metric, which is how can we minimize time to value for our customers? So think about it. They buy a ticket to a training. They wait 2 or 3 weeks until it happens. They get on a plane, they go there, they learn the thing, and then they go back and they start using what they learned. What if we could take this training and package it so that people can get it instantly without having to get on a plane and the risk of something, a storm or something happening and it not the training not going off? So what we did is I thought about all those questions. Can we get the slides? Can we get the templates, the worksheets, the whatever it was? And I said, I bet I can package this into what I refer to as toolkits, where I not only give you all of the resources that are in the room with me during my training, but all of the teaching and the wisdom and the expertise that I help people with during those in-person training workshops. I'll just record a bunch of videos and step the person start to finish through those frameworks. And so what we started to do is we took our training. So we went from $50,000, $100,000 active service to $1,000 package service of training to $250 do-it-yourself, enable yourself, educate yourself with our toolkits. So the way that I thought about it, it might sound counterintuitive, but I wanted to put into these toolkits everything I knew about each of these frameworks. Each of these boxes was a framework that I would come in and use to do the work that I did. And I wasn't trying to hold back or not give you a piece of information or not give you a guide or make you unsuccessful so that you hired me. I wanted to put everything in here so that you didn't have to hire me. So that was my mindset. And I got to that point because I was so burnt out. I was actually trying to give my job away to these toolkits, but it's an important reminder for you not to hold back. And we'll kind of like dig into that some more as we go. So I packed everything into these toolkits. And what happened was people started buying them through our website. And it was, for me, hands-free sales, which was a total blessing. Because guess what? All of that time that I won back from marketing and selling, the training services and the active services, these toolkits were kind of like running on autopilot. And this is sort of this reverse flywheel that I want to talk you through today. Before we get to that, I'll just say, over the course of a few years, these toolkits on their own we sold around $80,000 worth. I call it semi-passive because I still did some maintenance to them. I iterated them. Once in a blue moon, I would promote them, but more or less, they sat on a website, people bought them, and I'm going to show you how I got people to find out about them. But more or less, they just sold. And so after some time, that's what brought us to phase 3. So first I had one toolkit, then I added a second, then I added a third that was free that pointed to the 2 paid toolkits. And what started to happen was we built this sort of ecosystem of offers. And we just kept asking ourselves the same question over and over again. How can we make it easier for us to fulfill this thing and for our customers to buy it? And if it leads to a sale of our premium offer, great, amazing, everybody wins. So I want to talk you through that. This is what I'm referring to as a reverse flywheel. So what we did is start at the very top. And we didn't do this intentionally, but the way that I do it now and the way I teach others how to do it, I wouldn't do it and coach it any other way. So I actually start with a high ticket premium done for you service. For us, it was something that we sold for $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 or more. It was what we called this business opportunity accelerator. And then we just kept asking ourselves the question, if we want to sell this thing, and we want to sell more of it, what's something that we could do that demonstrates our expertise, gives shorter time to value for our customer, and helps to promote our premium service? So those at first, those were our training workshops. Again, ask the question, how can we get more people in the training workshops? Well, if we sell a online package toolkit, maybe some of those people will raise their hand for training. And that's exactly what happened. They'd use the toolkit. I love this thing. I want to teach my team how you do your design sprints and your problem framing. They'll sign up for an upcoming training. People that would come to the training, one or two people in the room would be like, hey, we have to actually have you come in and do this for a big project of ours. It was great. We learned a lot, but we don't entirely trust ourselves to do it. We'd rather you just do it for us. All right. And so we kept asking that question over and over again. How can we get a person that's here? How can we make it easier for them to trust this step and move one step up the ladder? But we built it in reverse. So we started building quizzes that would measure how, as a team, how good they were at their own sort of product innovation. And based on the results, they would get recommended one of the toolkits, and on and on and on. So we built these templates. We would run these email-based courses that we created. I would run webinars. And at the very top, of course, I was constantly active on social media and still am today. So we had these sort of like free gateway offers that would sort of meet the person where they were at all the way till they were sort of at our premium service. Not everybody, but a percentage of people that had educated themselves and they were ready to buy, they would end up being a customer of our premium services. And guess what I'm doing this entire time? I'm not paying attention to this. It's just actively running in the background while I'm serving clients. So this is,
Okay.
yeah.
A quick question, and you can answer it after. I don't mean to interrupt your flow, but I know people often ask of just like, how do you know how much to charge at any of these levels? So I'm curious, how do you say this is 30,000, this is $1,000? Are you going to get into that too? Am I getting ahead of it?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it for me has always been, I'm not a pricing strategist. I kind of go out and look at the market and see what are the alternative and competitive solutions. So what are other people charging for training? At the time, $1,000 was competitive based on where my competitors were charging for. They were more in the $5,000 to $10,000 range. So I always wanted to be somewhere in the middle. And for the premium services, that was a multi-year set of experiments that we were constantly leveling up in terms of what we were able to do. And the free and low ticket stuff, again, there are courses out there, maybe even in adjacent markets, teaching similar skills. So I just tend to do a bare bones sweep of what other people are doing in a similar field or with a similar format or offer. And I try to price competitively.
Dig. Cool. Thank you.
Good question. So where I left off was my hands were not on this wheel after a point. It took a ton of effort to build this. And this was a multi-year effort. I will never promise you that you build this thing in a weekend and it's printing money for you the next day. This took many years. We did have almost immediate success with each of the toolkits and all of the training workshops, but to build this thing and for it to start spinning on its own took some time. So, but when it did, it became very much an automated sales funnel, or what I refer to as a reverse flywheel. It's a great book called, I don't know what it's called, Jim Collins. I should probably remember that, about what a flywheel looks like. And he has examples from Amazon, and it makes total sense to me. I just felt like it worked better for me to build it in reverse and to constantly ask yourself the question of how can you help people sooner, faster, easier, more affordably, and sort of like spread your impact. So where I'm going to get into in a second is sort of the steps that you can take to do this for yourself. Just want to cap it off by showing you what happened for the company. So I already said that over a few years, the company made $80,000 in direct sales of those toolkits. Can't run a company, especially a company of 35 people, on $80,000. So there is passive revenue or semi-passive revenue. People, just to stress this, because I get a lot of questions about, is passive revenue real, or passive income real? And I think a lot of those questions and doubts come from people that actually haven't tried on their own. And I'll tell you that these toolkits are for a company called New Haircut that I no longer actively operate. It's there. And I wake up every day to people downloading my free toolkits, buying my paid toolkits, and occasionally, as people drift through the funnel, emailing me to say, hey, we have this thing coming up, big project, can you help us? I haven't touched these toolkits in 4 years. I wouldn't do that today. If I were actively operating New Haircut, I would continually upgrade and update these materials, but I'm not. I'm building a different company now, and yet people are still finding them. My funnel is still pointing people to where they need to be through my content, my blogs, whatever it is, and finding the toolkits. They buy them, they ask for more help. That feels pretty passive to me. So we don't have to get into semantics here, but I think there is such thing as passive income if you're willing to explore and put in the work. But that's not the thing that I sell, and that's not the major outcome that I work when I work with clients. It's sort of a nice to have. Everyone loves the freedom and the idea that money can be coming in while you're sleeping. I think for business owners that are trying to do a thing and create impact in the world while also enjoying some flexibility and some freedom, there's this huge bucket of marketing and selling that if we could simplify that, we would have hours back in our day and in our week so that we can sell the major flagship premium offer that we have. So the passive revenue is there, but the best part for me is that those toolkits, because I was such a shitty marketer and salesperson, or just maybe I wasn't so shitty, but I was lazy. It just wasn't my jam. I didn't like doing it. But when the toolkits existed and then all those other offers, that flywheel, they started pushing my primed, educated consumer to me and saying, hey, we want to hire you for your thing. And so eventually over those 3 years, we sold close to almost $1 million worth of our premium active consulting. And it was mostly on the back of that flywheel that I had built. I was definitely not the person that was out there doing a lot of pitching and prospecting. So that's the win that I think excites me as a business owner. The fact that you can create a thing, you can make money from it, and it helps to upsell the work that you started your business in the first place to be doing. That's the win that I'm trying to encourage for other people as well. So I'm curious if you had a way to add $80,000 in whatever we want to call it, semi-passive revenue, and those things, those products that were making money for you were helping to upsell the premium offer that you have, you were able to add another $1 million or so in sales. I mean, how would that transform your life, your work? What about you, Jonah?
I was just gonna say significantly. It's always interesting because you have to look for opportunities to reinvest that money back into your systems and how you're operating. But I mean, I also live in the Midwest, so $80,000 goes a long way here. There's so much you can do with that. I would probably most immediately hire help. I think that is the thing people always wait too long to do. It would be a joy to have that. Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, if you're here live and you want to drop these as comments in, please go for it. If you're watching the recording, drop your ideas, questions, and I'll come back into where this will be on YouTube, and I'll come back and I'll respond to all these comments. So let me recap my experience, and then I want to talk you through these sort of like 5 steps that you can take to kind of like build the same system. So by productizing the stuff that I did with a New Haircut, I did start to generate predictable passive revenue streams. And as I mentioned, that was a nice win, but not the biggest win. Biggest win was that I started to systematize and automate the development of my funnel and that pipeline so that I didn't have to be actively hands on the wheel, constantly prospecting, pitching, doing the work that I really did not enjoy doing. And by the time those people did raise their hand, drop me an email, shoot me a DM, say, hey, used your toolkits, love them, want to talk to you about a related project. You're clearly the guy that we should talk to about product innovation, whatever it was. Those kinds of sales calls, they're not 18-month drag through the mud things. Those are things that people are like, we've got a project. You're clearly the person we want to talk to. They were 80% sold. That felt great. Now, wow, I could get, if this is what sales is supposed to look like, I can get used to this. And I'm the kind of person, I don't know about you, I did not enjoy those sales calls, but now I am enjoying them because I got the right person in the call with me and they're ready to go. And so tons of time back. Sherry, you and I, we've got a lot of time back on our hands. So we get to invest that wherever, like it depends on who you are. You can reinvest it like Joan is talking about, the money, the time back into the business. You can hire, you can spend time with your family, you can work less, you can retire earlier. Whatever is your version of dream business, this is the system that you need that enables that to be true. So that's what I experienced. And what stopped me along the way, and I think what stops it a lot of other people, is you just kind of get like overwhelmed. You show up day in and day out, you're running the business. How am I going to justify like stopping and building this other offer, this product, and learning all these different things? I'm just going to stay sat in the same sort of like tactics that I've been using, that my competitors are using. I would spend hours writing a case study to get it in somebody's hand. And then I'd look at the metrics of all our case study pages. Nobody cared. Nobody was looking at those. So it took enough burnout and fail and that slog for me to try something different. So I understand if you're just sort of entrained to go through the same playbook that you've always been using. I've been there. And then even if you convince yourself, like, okay, let me try out this productized thing that Jay's talking about, where do you start? What's the right offer? And then where I constantly, 15 years into being an entrepreneur, I'm always asking this question too soon. I don't know if I'm going to win from it. I don't know if I'm going to get the ROI out of it. And this is like, there's risk, there's inherent risk in starting any new venture or trying any new tactic. And what I'm trying to do as a business is to de-risk that process so that more people can have a lot of success doing it. They can get some early quick wins. They could see that it's a channel and a system that they want to continue to invest in. So I hope that was a good backdrop for you guys. So what I want to do is somewhat quickly talk you through, I'm going to do this in about 7 minutes so we have time for Q&A at the end. So 5 steps that you can take to start productizing. First, you're going to identify your most productizable service. It's a weird word. I'll show you what that means. You're going to define your product's job to be done. I'll also explain what that means. You're going to choose a product format. We'll look at a few different formats that you could choose from. You'll outline your content and then you will launch. And you'll do this simply. There's a way to get fancy and sophisticated, but no need, especially for your first offer. So let's just talk through each of these quickly. So first is identify your most productizable service. So remember my story. What were the things that I had done? I had reps. I had run 100 design sprints. I got questions. It became natural to me. Other people that I would watch run a design sprint for their first time, they would fumble through it. They wouldn't know what to expect. I could anticipate questions and pitfalls and challenges and objections from any number of industry players and people in the room. So I knew exactly how to frame it, how to soften it, how to add some humor to it, how to help people feel successful in the process because member stakes were high. So those things, if you can find that work that you're already doing, you shouldn't go and invent a new thing. You're already doing something. You're already teaching something. You're enabling, you're transforming, you're helping, you're consulting, coaching, training. Pick a service that you're already doing and comes natural to you, that maybe there's curiosity from others or there's enough challenges and objections. And then there's a star here. If you've already trained other people how to do that specific thing, a framework, methodology, an approach you took, something that you overcame, if you're already training people, you actually have an offer that's sitting right under your nose. And when my clients come through and they say, I do this body of work, and once in a while I run this like lunch and learn or this brown bag session, or I teach it in like this quick little webinar, that tends to be the foundation that I help sort of like dig out. And within there is a productizable offer that they can build upon. So look for those things and just kind of simply just ask yourself, like, is there demand for this thing? So there's this sweet spot between demand from your market, your relative expertise, You don't have to, I'm not saying that you have to have 10,000 hours so that you can productize something, but enough that you have the reps that you can anticipate the questions, objections, challenges. And then in general, how much effort. So good rule of thumb for your first offer, don't build this entire mastermind that's going to swallow you whole for a year and a half building it, because you're going to run out of steam and you're going to get frustrated. You're going to give up. Look for something simple. And we'll talk about formats in a second. Okay. Once you have that, then figure out what do I want to do with this thing? And there's this comes from the world of product strategy, defining your product's job to be done. What is the job? The person that is consuming that, whatever that offer, why are they hiring that thing? What job are they trying to have that thing do for them? So what problem will it solve for them? Or if you flip it sort of on its head, what desired outcome will it deliver for them? Really sounds straightforward, but that North Star needs to be front and center. Otherwise, you wind up taking shortcuts. You kind of build the thing that nobody actually needs and wants. And if you follow that enough, you slip into a little bit of like selfish thinking of what's the quickest way that I can monetize this thing. And that's just your surest way to blow things up and fail. So once you have that, so you've figured out a service that you enjoy doing, that's some curiosity that you can help people with, there's some demand for it. You understand, like, ultimately, where are you trying to get the person by the end of consuming this thing? Where do you want them to be? Then you can start to think about different formats. So in other words, there are do-it-yourself and low-ticket versions. So think about like templates that you've bought. Like everybody sells these Notion templates, worksheets. Get a little bit more sophisticated, you can create an online or video-based course. I created my first course for Profit Ladder in Teachable. So that's why we're all here, because there are these learning platforms like Teachable that, I mean, I can't imagine if they didn't exist, how much more difficult this would be. So video-based courses, you can also make it a little bit simpler on yourself and start with an email-based course. Actually, it's a really nice flow. If you write out an email-based course, I use that as my script that I then use, or sort of my outline in my script, to go and build an online video-based course. Toolkits, which for me, I define toolkit as like both educating and enabling. So it's sort of like the combination of those top couple bullets. And then ebooks, right? So like you can package up wisdom and content into something that is consumable by someone. So those are what I would consider do-it-yourself and low ticket. And then if you step up the rung a little bit in terms of complexity of building, there are more done with you versions, probably more of like a packaged version that is more mid-ticket, $500, $1,000. So cohort-based trainings, like I talked to you about, masterminds, and challenges. And these are typically like, they're not completely passive in the sense, because you are showing up and giving some of your time. So those are different formats that you could experiment with. So what I want to just dip a toe in the water here is that what's really cool about this whole thing, there's a phase 4 that I didn't cover because I built Profit Ladder. I actually didn't build phase 4, but now I'm building it as part of Profit Ladder. As you start to add more and more offers and you start to build these ecosystems, what winds up happening is now you can create access to all of your offers and offer them as a subscription, right? And when you have that subscription, now you've gone from a service-based business that gets paid to show up to do a thing to having an ecosystem of offers that you can expose people to and allow a subscription-based membership. Now you've turned your company into one that can generate monthly recurring revenue, which is really exciting. Okay. Step 4, you're going to outline your product's content. So this is sort of a multi-step thing. You're going to start at the end. You've already done this, actually. You have your North Star that you did in step 2. Then you're going to think in milestones. So you go from where you want the person to be by the end of your offer, your product, and you're going to break out your major milestones. So milestones, if you're building a toolkit of sorts, these are your modules. If you're writing an ebook, they're sort of like the sections of your ebook, right? And then you're just going to keep chunking out a couple levels down. So when you go one step further, you're getting into the chunks. So a chunk with a toolkit are like your lessons that you're going to teach. So this is one of the pillars in your toolkit. You're going to teach 3 lessons in order to get them through that pillar, and then they're ready for the next one. And when you chunk and chunk and chunk down, it makes it a lot more easier. It just takes a little bit of thinking, but putting the paces in now will make the development of your offer much, much easier, to the point where you can actually start to earmark your content. So when you have something, and I actually, in the work that I do, I help my client visualize this. And then we go through all those chunks and we say, okay, what do we need? This one, you need 3 videos, you need a template, and you need this bonus resource that you promised them. Okay, cool. That one's done. Next one. And what you're able to do is lay out all the different pieces of content that you then need to go and produce. So that's how I think about breaking out your outline. The last step is to put together a launch plan for yourself. These can get really involved, let's just say. And actually, when I built my course, by the way, I'm going to plug Teachable hard here. They actually gave me a launch partner, Soph, and they helped me think through all of these blind spots that I've launched many offers, and they helped me think through all these different ways to create wait lists and pre-launch offers and all the little like to-dos and tasks that you can easily get sort of like lost in the fray. So we can get really complicated here, but if all that you did was launch a sales page, I like using Card. You can use Unbounce if you already have a website builder, have at it. Something very simple, which becomes a very important asset for you to get feedback on and start to build your wait list and start to validate the product that you're bringing to market. And you build it, and that is a very dense check mark there, because there's a lot that goes into building these things. And you launch it. It's honestly as simple as that. You can get fancy. You can do launch campaigns. You can drive people to it. You can do launch windows where you pull down discounts. But if all that you do are these 4 things, especially for your first offer, you're good to go. This little checklist is already more than I did for my toolkits, and they did fine. Okay, so I think we're just about ready. I just want to leave you with a couple things, and then we're going to get into Q&A in the last 10 minutes. So the way I think about business building, then, having gone through this whole experience for myself, the old way that I used to build things was I would prospect the hell out of all these different people. I would pitch and pitch and pitch and hustle, burn myself to the ground to win one sale. And for me, I really hit up on that. That burnout was real, and I really don't want to see other people go through that. So when I think about business building for this business that I'm building for myself today, I'm thinking about ways to automate and have more exponential scale, because then I get to put all that time back into serving more clients, having more impact, and honestly, spending more time with my friends and family. So what I'm doing to that is, when I think about productizing, there's some work. You're gonna have to work at doing this. But when you do that, instead of prospecting once to prospecting repeatedly to sell once, you flip the model on its head. And now you're productizing one time to sell to many. That for me is profits, freedom, it's impact, it's everything that goes into my dream business. So, and for me, that comes by productizing your services. There's a lot of automation that comes with it. There's a lot of freedom that you win back. To be honest with you, I'm going to skip by some of this stuff because I really want to make sure there's a lot of doubts. So what I want to do is I'm going to just leave this up here. I want to take questions, Jonah. What I'm doing is I actually created this QR code, and I think, Jonah, you have a link to my Profit Accelerator. I have a free quick start that if you use it, you'll see it says for attendees of the Teachable event today, I do a 45-minute quick start with people, and we'll kind of unpack the business you're building, what you're trying to grow, where you're getting stuck. And I will leave you with some ideas. If we work together, amazing. If you use it to build a business that it becomes a dream for you, also amazing. So you can scan that or use the link that Jonah drops.
Yeah. We have a few questions coming in, and everyone watching, please drop your questions in. It takes a second for them to populate for us. I did want to start with Sherry had a great question. how many days was your 1K workshop? 1 or 2 days? Also, how did you drive prospects to your website? So you can tackle those as two separate ones too.
Yep. First workshops were the one that we ran in Berlin was a 2-day. It was in person, and we started at $1,000. I think it ranged up to 1,500 or 2,000 at a point. And then we actually tried to break it down into smaller chunks. So at a point, we made it sub $1,000 and 1 day. And we got so good at it that we went from 4 trainers to 1. How do we get people, how do we drive people to the website for it? So we used Eventbrite, which has its own sort of, I haven't used it in a bit. I actually use Luma these days, but they have their own sort of discoverability within those that will send based on hashtags and other things in your content of your events. They'll send people to it. But then we would also take links to that and drop it into our website, our content. We would do webinars to sort of like talk about the frameworks and the training, and people that would come to the webinars, we would point to the training if they wanted to level up. So we experimented with a whole bunch of stuff. One thing we never did was paid. So we only used earned and owned channels to promote those things.
Smart. I know paid can work, but I don't love
Sure.
tipping Mark Zuckerberg when it doesn't. um, I was curious because creators have all sorts of advice. I think it's interesting to focus on like your high ticket offer because I think a lot of people's gut instinct is to focus on a cheap thing, something you could sell quick.
Mhm.
Um, can you talk a bit about like the advantages of that and also how to get comfortable with that? Because it makes sense to me that if you can feel good about selling something for 30K, that it's much easier to go down versus the other way.
Yeah.
I'm curious how and why you think that way.
Yeah. I mean, also perspective. So the offer that I have today is a $5,000 program that I do. That's the most money you could pay me with the body of work that I do inside Profit Ladder, but that's my premium offer. And what's happening is I start there and I work one-on-one with people. We go through 4 rounds of deep dive workshops, and through each of them, I give them homework. They object to the homework. I can't do it. I'm stuck. This is hard. My customer is different, and we work through it. We've always worked through it. But what's happening is I'm building up sort of like a bank of objections, questions, challenges. Oh, I had to add an example here. I had to give them a different template. And all of that are the reps that help me be able to solve that problem easier, faster, and for me, without me in the room with them. So by the time we get together, as my process evolves, by the time a client and I are now together, we're hitting the ground running. They still have questions, they still have doubts, but we've cleared a lot of that up. And what happens is now I can take that and I can offer it as a standalone without me at all involved in the process. I can give them those templates. I can coach them through the parts that they get stuck through pre-recorded material. And now I have a productized version of that one-on-one work. So that's why for me, that reverse flywheel of starting with the premium and dropping down into pulling yourself out of the equation, but still adding value, making it more accessible, more affordable, minimizing time to value. Person doesn't have to hire me. They can get it through my courses and toolkits. I think everyone wins when you do it that way.
Mm. How do you have systems like how do you keep track of all that stuff you learn in the one-on-one stuff? Because I also see a lot of people who do that all the time, but then when it comes to making a course or digital product, they feel like they're starting totally from scratch.
Yeah. I'll say this. I teach this for a living. And when I'm at the point where I'm like, okay, I've got enough, I want to create an offer, I hire one of two friends who are sort of like strategists. And I'm like, please pull the ideas out of my head.
Mm.
In the process, what I do is I've got all my notes. I record all the sessions. I never share them publicly, but I record them. I have the work that we do together is all captured on mural boards. So I can go back at any point and see in their words what did they say when they got stuck? What did they write? What was our conversation about? Because I'm note taking for them to help them get through those objections. That becomes literally like a canvas, not only to productize, but for my marketing, I can go back and I can pull their words and phrases. It's not with their names, but I can objectively see like where they were stuck. And I take all that information that becomes sort of like my foundation to turn that into an offer. And I hire people, but I also feed a lot of that into my version of ChatGPT, which is very, very intelligent about what I do at this point. I've been using it for a year, and I get a ton of ideas based on all the transcripts, all the information that I feed into that. I have more offers that I could create than I have a lifetime to build.
I love I feel like that's a whole event in itself of like building your own GPT, but that's such a good use of that tool.
Yeah.
Um, so if someone like I think it's also really easy to get distracted or just overwhelmed as a creator. Like you you have this offering, you know you're doing coaching, you know it could be other products. Do you literally recommend going just down the ladder of products, or how do you identify like the best of use of your time, including when you have AI saying like, here's 200 possible offers you could do?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. I think like um, the way I think about that ladder is you're answering questions for people and demonstrating you're giving them value, and you're answering questions and you're helping them overcome their own objections wherever they are on in their own journey. And some people will be sort of red hot, ready to buy, like need all the help in the world, want you there in the trenches with them. And other people want to like kick the tires a little bit. It's the kicking the tires that I used to spend all my time actively trying to convince and give them a new set of tires over and over and over and over again, until the point where I like resented my market. So instead of doing that yourself over and over, pack that all into your stuff. So like everyone has a funnel, whether you like actively have a CRM and you could see where your drop offs are. But I think like seeing where you lose most of your clients along that journey to your premium service, that's probably an area where you can add a
Mm.
thing. And maybe it's not a productized offer. Maybe it is just a testimonial or a case study that's like super targeted and really descriptive and really kind of answers people's objections. Maybe it's a strong piece of content. But for the person to go from sort of like interest to taking action, especially if you're charging $5,000 or $10,000, you probably like if you could just show them what it will be like to work with you, they'll be so much more ready to, they spend their first dollar. Now they're 7 times more likely. I think that's the right number. They're 7 times more likely to spend more money on you because you've sort of like helped them in their time of need without wringing them dry in terms of charging them all their worth.
Yeah. Well, Jay, we have to wrap up here for time, but thank you so much for taking the time and sharing with us. All of the links to Jay's platforms and socials are in the description below. You'll also get that along with the link that's in the chat for his Profit Accelerator in the email if you signed up for the event on Teachable's website. Jay, any last parting advice or words for our audience before we wrap up today?
No, I mean, stay focused on the right things. Figure out ways that you can automate and systematize. Most of the time there are offers sitting right under your nose. You just have to be willing to look at where your customers are getting stuck and where you can help them.
Love it. Thank you so much, Jay. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today, both live and if you're watching the replay. Hop in the comments. Let us know what you learned, what you think, what you're still having problems with. We love bringing creators like Jay on to help you solve all of those. So have a wonderful day, everyone. And thank you, Jay. Thank you all for being here.
Thanks, Jonah.